Hi, I'm Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guide. Also today, I'm at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Franklin Institute is located on 222 North 20th Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and is open 7 days a week from 9:30 to 5, except for major holidays. The institute was founded in 1824, and the Franklin Institute is one of the oldest centers of science education and development in the country. The institute's original building at 15th South 7th Street, later the home of the now defunct Atwater Kent Museum, eventually proved too small for the Institute's research, educational programs, and library. The Institute moved into its current home on the Benjamin Franklin Parkway near the intersection of 20th Street in 1934.
The new facility was intended from the start to educate visitors through hand-on interactions with exhibits. The Franklin Institute was also found for the promotion of the mechanic arts. It's a science museum and the center of science education and research in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is named after the American scientist and statesman Benjamin Franklin. It houses the Benjamin Franklin National Memorial. Also, it even features train exhibits in what is known as the Train Factory, but is no longer known as that. It's now where the Hamilton Collection is, because in 2024, the train gallery was closed for about a year for renovations, but reopened in late 2024 as well. It's got two steam locomotives on display. The biggest piece in the building would be the Baldwin Locomotive Works 60,000. That steam locomotive is the 60,000th steam locomotive built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is where the Baldwin Locomotive Works was. Also, some of the buildings were transformed into office buildings, while most of them were transformed into apartment buildings as well. What you see right behind me is Baldwin 60,000.
Baldwin 60,000 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1926 and is the 60,000th steam locomotive built by that factory and is a 410-2 Baldwin type steam locomotive. This locomotive got the road name Baldwin and was numbered 60,000 when it rolled out of the Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it was the 60,000th steam locomotive that Baldwin constructed, like I mentioned. Also, it is a three-cylinder locomotive. The locomotive was designed to test the potential benefits of high steam pressure and a high ratio of expansion in steam locomotives. After a series of brief test runs following construction, the locomotive was sent to the Pennsylvania Railroad's Altoona test plant in Altoona, Pennsylvania. It was placed on rollers without its tender and was tested on the traction dynamometer to measure its performance, which included maximum drawbar horsepower following tests at the Altoona test plant. The Pennsylvania Railroad placed the engine in freight service between Enola Yard near Harrisburg and Morrisville Yard via the Trenton Cutoff. During testing on the Pennsylvania Railroad, it pulled a maximum of 7,700 tons. After that, it was sent to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad for additional testing and was tested on the Cumberland Division between Brunswick and Kaiser, Maryland, the Connellsville Division between Cumberland, Maryland and Connellsville, Pennsylvania, and the Pittsburgh Division, which included the Sand Patch and the 17-mile grades. In 1927, it was sent over to the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad and traveled on the Beardstown Division of Illinois. The locomotive was run in tandem with the railroad's own M2 A-Class 210-2, number 6157, in order to compare coal and water consumptions. The locomotive I just mentioned was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1920, and was the 540/74 steam locomotive built by that factory and was later sold for scrap. Overall, the locomotive was superior in its coal and water consumption. After that, it was sent to the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, and testing was performed on the Pecos division between Clovis and Belen, New Mexico. As with the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe compared the performance of it with that of its own power in the form of two 3800 class 210-2s. Once more, the locomotive demonstrated superior fuel consumption than the locomotives of the host railroad. Then, in summer and fall that year, it was then sent to the Southern Pacific Railroad, which overhauled the locomotive and converted it to an oil burner at the railroad Sacramento shops in Sacramento, California. Following its conversion, the locomotive was tested in both freight and passenger service on the Sacramento division, during which the engine carried a Southern Pacific tender. After the test on the Southern Pacific, it was tested on the Great Northern Railway between Everett, Washington and Minot, North Dakota. Overall, the locomotive did not perform as well as on oil as it did on coal. It was converted back to coal and was sent back to the factory that built the locomotive and was used as a stationary boiler. Then, in 1933, the locomotive was donated to the Franklin Institute Science Museum in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. As it made its way to the museum, it was leapfrogged to the site and was moved from the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad tracks at 24th and Vine Street over temporary tracks to the site, which was still under construction at that time. Also, it was on display for many years. Also, the locomotive can be seen in the museum, and there were times it would be moved on the tracks, but then that later discontinued. Then, in the year 2023 and 2024, the gallery was going under renovations to house the Hamilton collection, and the locomotive looks like it's standing on a bridge as well. Also, as you visit the locomotive, you can even visit the cab and even sit where the engineer and fireman would have sat as well.
What you see right behind me is Philadelphia and Reading 3.
Philadelphia and Reading 3 was built by Eastwick and Harrison here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1842, and is the 42nd steam locomotive built by that factory, and is a 440 American type steam locomotive. Also, the locomotive is named Shamokin. This locomotive operated initially on a branch of the Reading Railroad called the People's Railway in between Pottsville and Minersville, Pennsylvania, and hauled freight and passenger. Later, it was put in a dead line. Then, in the late 1800s, it was rescued from the dead line and was preserved. In 1923, it was then used by the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad, and it was then used as a switcher in Reading, Pennsylvania. In 1933, it was donated to the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where it is seen today.
Okay, I'm going to show you all the train exhibits in the Hamilton collection downstairs. So I'll get behind the camera and here we go. And this is the access platform to the steam engines cab, by the way. So here we go. Okay, so as we view the train exhibits and the cases, that's part of the Hamilton collection. We'll start here. There are some typewriters and an old-fashioned telephone up there. This is a model of a GG1, by the way. This is my favorite electric locomotive. And they serve the Pennsylvania Railroad, and also there's no number seen on this at all, but yeah, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. And also here's a trolley that may have seen service around Philadelphia years ago. And in this case, down on the bottom, there's some old locomotive parts, some gauges, builder plates, and mini couplers, mini lanterns in regular size. They put this up in 2024, and there's a locomotive chassis, a logging gondola car, tanker, and caboose. And there's some 440s. That looks like the $9.99 at the Museum of Science and Industry. And their tags are telling. This looks like the model of the rocket steam engine that used to be here, but now it's at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg. And I wonder what that one is. It looks like it says Northern Pacific on it. Yeah. Well, I hope you all enjoyed learning about trains with me today in Matthew Lapp Train Guy. Also, I hope to see you all again real soon. Also, if you didn't subscribe to the channel yet, the subscribe button is just down below the video screen. And if you didn't give the Facebook page a like yet, here's where you want to go. And if you didn't give the Instagram page a follow yet, here's where you want to go as well. Also, be sure to get your merch at teesprings.com. The link is in the description box below, along with Facebook and Instagram pages. And always remember to subscribe to the Train Guy. So this is Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy, signing out. Until next time, all aboard.